And welcome back to the Outsider Sports Show. Clint Schweitzer, Noah Gruninger, and we are talking Brian and the Boz, the latest 30 for 30. We are currently joined by the director of the film, Thaddeus Matula. Welcome to the show, Thaddeus. How's everything going? I know you haven't been busy this week or anything.
Yeah, I've been. I'm really tired. That's how everything's going. It's been a long, I guess 3 years, but I was going to say it's been a long week. But it was over 3 years ago now that I got the first phone call about the possibility of doing this film, and I'm looking forward to this weekend because I've got nothing planned.
Well, yes.
But I want to say it's a real pleasure to be on with you guys. Thank you so much for having me. It's really cool that I get to do these kinds of things. Being a director, it's just fun to be able to do this. And I know when I come on these shows that I represent a lot of great people, and my crew is amazing, and they work just as hard, if not harder, than I do. So just thank you again.
Oh, absolutely. And I got a chance to watch the film last night. Game 6 of the World Series was a complete blowout. Got to catch the film in its entirety. It was absolutely amazing. Definitely in my top 5 of 30 for 30s. And of course, you also did Pony Excess, which I want to ask you about a little later. But you talked about 3 years ago, the process starting. And I've always kind of wondered how this works with these 30 for 30s, because I'm so obsessed with these. It's insane. My Netflix, that's all I watch. So you said 3 years ago this process started. Did someone come to you with this idea? Did you present the topic? How did it all get going?
Well, someone came to me, and I got to tell you, I wouldn't have ever imagined that I would do a movie about the Boz. I was one of those people that, enjoyed it while he was on the rise, but, as a kid, I was one of the many people that he lost. And I didn't, when I first got a call about it, it wasn't necessarily for me to direct. It was calling me for advice. And my first thought is like, boy, I don't even know if I want to see a movie about the Boz. And so, but the guy told me that he had Brian Bosworth's support, and he also had Coach Schweitzer on board, and had the support of the university, plus had a little bit of money. So I was like, he had liked Pony Excess, and he had just found it. He'd just gone for some contacts he had at SMU, and somehow an ex-kicker at SMU had my son. And got us in touch. But a week after that first phone call, then I heard from Parker again, a guy by the name of Parker Douglas. I heard from Parker again, and he asked me if I wanted to direct. And my first thought was, how much money did you say you had?
Yeah.
But then what happened is, I knew that these were obviously huge characters, and I also knew that telling stories is something that I'm good at. So I knew that going in, we were going to be able to find a great and fascinating story. I just didn't know how great and fascinating. And it really shifted, though. It was probably exactly 3 years ago. Right now, it's probably October of that year, that I was going to be flown out to Los Angeles to meet with Brian and his then fiance, now wife, Morgan, to just, so they could get a face to the name, and we could talk and, make sure that Brian was comfortable with me. And they got wind, however, that I lived in Austin, that I was an Austin filmmaker, and neither of them had ever been to Austin. I'm telling a different part of the story now. I just got into it. This is how Brian Bosworth ended up in Austin, Texas, of all places. So he and his fiance convinced this original producer, Parker Douglas, that hey, why don't you just fly us out to Austin? We've never been there. People who aren't from this part of the country will forget that that the game that Texas and Oklahoma plays, even though it's the biggest rivalry, it's in a neutral site always. So Brian hadn't been here, Morgan hadn't been here, and apparently the night we got together went well, because we had a movie premiere last night, and within a few weeks or a few months of that meeting, they were married, and then within that year, they were living in Austin, Texas, about as far away from the Boz as you can get, I would guess.
Yes, we've learned that burnt orange is not exactly his favorite color from the film. It was such an engaging personality, such a almost humble tone that I got from him from the interviews of from present day compared to kind of some of the stuff from before. What was the biggest thing that you learned about this man? Because we all have our perception of the character that we knew, almost to me like as a kid, like almost a pro wrestler image that Brian Bosworth had. So what was the biggest thing that you learned about Brian and how he lives today?
Well, I mean, the pro wrestler is spot on because the Boz is a character that he played, and then the character became him, and that happened over in stages. At first it was just like he was inspired by Coach Switzer, and Barry would say whatever he wanted, and just do whatever he wanted, act however, and he was revered, and the media loved his sort of crass and brash, braggadocio style, and so that's what Brian brought in. He said to his son in a scene that is not in the movie, but he's like, he was kind of like the Swiss, and so I became the Boz. And then as it went on, he kept playing this character, and then that's what the public wanted. And then he had an agent come in who was then trying to capitalize on this character, and he had to keep being this jerk. And then what happens is his career, the trajectory of his career, he gets ejected from this great trajectory, which would have, perhaps led him to the to the NFL Hall of Fame. But he was worn down, and he broke down, and in the public eye though, he was still this jerk, and to make matters worse, he cries out and writes all this stuff in a book, and then he can't go back to his home to where he feels like he has this touchstone place, this Oklahoma, where his heart is, because he's totally isolated himself from them. And then when his football career is over, he is then still this shy, insecure kid that is scared of a lot, that he had been when he had left for Oklahoma, and then created this character to hide behind, and now he had been left with the wreckage that character had created, and all he wanted to do was run from it. But the only thing that could really make him money that he knew was to go out and continue to be this macho jerk, and so for the last, I'd say, 25 years, Brian was kind of frozen until his father died, and the fact that he had never been right with his father finally snapped him into a place where he wanted to do something about it, and that's when I met him. I met him soon after his father had died, a little bit after he had a messy divorce with his childhood sweetheart, and he was broken, and he was looking to change, and he didn't know what that change was going to look like. So he very quickly opened up to me, and I knew that this was going to be a story of change, of his change, and I wanted to be a part of it. And what an honor to be involved with someone as they're going through this, and to be able to at times check in on it and document it. It's been a really cool thing, and it's really awesome to share it out with the world. I mean, it takes a lot of courage to be so vulnerable and show that to the world.
Well, we saw a vulnerable moment in the film, and I guess I want to get back to to Brian's recruitment to Oklahoma real quick, because obviously, if there's anyone that knows anything about Southwest Conference and Texas high school football recruiting, that'd be you. You've directed Pony Express, which there was a little bit of maybe some improprieties that occurred at that point in time. Not just a theory right now, but so Brian originally committed to Texas A&M, which is something I did not know. And he wasn't.
He actually originally committed to SMU. He committed to SMU, then he committed to Baylor, then he committed to LSU, then he committed to A&M, and then finally he committed to Oklahoma.
So yeah, and to that point, there was a bit of an undertone. Nothing really said in the film. Of course, Brian said I was kidnapped and taken to Texas to live for a while, and I was always wanted to come home to Oklahoma. That's what he did. But with Barry Switzer's reputation and the fact that the program had slipped a little bit, do you believe that there was anything improper with regards to Brian's recruitment to Oklahoma?
Oh, sure. I mean, it was the 80s. I mean, everybody was recruited improperly. I mean, we didn't cover it in the film because that's not the story. But
right.
I mean, the SMU people will tell you that they had an opportunity to match or better Oklahoma's offer and refused to do it. But I mean, Oklahoma people will. I mean, SMU people will tell you that any great recruit that they lost out on it, and that someone else paid more. But I just know the alums of my school, and I love them. But definitely that there was that. I mean, like when we interviewed Fred Akers, I asked him, well, why didn't Brian go to Texas? What's the real story? And Akers was like, well, we started to talk about your school, SMU, and he's like, there were some people that we just couldn't get.
Makes sense. Yeah, sometimes you just don't quite get the dollar sign, the decimals in the right place. Sometimes the ink doesn't have time to dry. A lot of ins, a lot of outs, but no, it's
a lot of what have you.
Right. A lot of interested parties.
Yeah, I mean, the picture of Brian in front of that Corvette that in the movie a few times. I mean, that was in college. I mean, I don't know how he afforded that Corvette or any of the other borrowed cars he had in Norman. But I mean, this is it's this kind of thing that like I would love to go back and do a fictionalized series on recruiting in the 80s, and it's not like it's all that different today. I mean, just go check the parking lots at any top 10 football program. And you will see some very nice vehicles. It's like a dealership. But the point being is that it was a Wild West recruiting age, and of course, I interviewing Dale Hansen, who had been a big part of the SMU story. We had a little fun with that. Not a lot of it made it into the film, or any of it, except for that line about, if you're going to spend your winters in Norman, Oklahoma, there's something that got you there.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe Barry Switzer, but Dale had talked about a favorite story of his about when he was covering Nebraska, and he had talked to Tom Osborne about this some great players that they had, including one walk-on who was from New Jersey, who was really good. And he asked him, he's like, now come on, coach, how did you get these guys? And he's like, well, that guy walked on. He just really, really wanted to play here. And he's like, he walked past a lot of really good schools to get here from New Jersey.
Bleed crimson and cream.
Yep. So it's something that the SMU fan, we were wronged, part of me would have wanted to cover to be a little spiteful and sad, but it wasn't a part of this movie, and so we didn't go into it too much. But I mean, Texas A&M at the time that was going on, they had what we found on Pony Excess was rumored to be a $1 million slush fund recruiting and buying up players. And I mean, that was the era of like craziness at Oklahoma State. The two biggest spenders, or the two most open biggest spenders were A&M and Oklahoma State, which makes sense because they were both sort of the number two schools in their states, and they had to do something to sway recruits who would just naturally go to Oklahoma or naturally go to Texas. But it was a fascinating time, and I have not I've not asked Brian exactly what he may or may not have gotten. But I definitely know that he was offered stuff at other schools.
Yes,
so,
of course.
Yeah. Everybody will always tell you about what other schools offered them.
Right. Of course. Well, yeah.
Well, moving on to Brian's pro career, what was it that made Brian decide that he didn't want to go to Seattle? And there was some controversy over that, and the GM saying, hey, "You've never been to the Northwest, Brian. Come on up here, take a look around. I think you'll like what you see."
Well, what happened was he picked out. I think there were only 28 teams in the NFL at that time. So he wrote letters to 23 of the 28 teams saying, "Don't draft me. I don't want to go." And he picked out, a handful of teams that were these are the teams that I want to play for. And with a lot of it, the main thing was when he declared for the supplemental draft, it was kind of something where he had a little bit more control, and he wanted to scare some people off. Well, with Seattle winning the draft lottery and having been on that list, that he had a little bit of bargaining power in the sense of well, they already know that I don't want to play for them, and so. And the reason being why he didn't want to play, why Seattle was on that 23 team list of don't draft me, is because at the time they didn't have a fan base. As Brian jokes, he didn't even know they had a team, and he wanted to go someplace where he could win, and I really almost feel like that his agent must have known that he wasn't going to last long with the way he played, or maybe it wasn't that, but he wanted to win and win now. And the other thing is he knew that he had to, in order to continue to capitalize on being the Boz, he had to be in a major market. So so that this Boz character could continue to live and be this massive figure. But yeah, I mean, I would assume that the New York and Los Angeles teams were on his list, and I think he even said don't draft me to the Cowboys because the Cowboys weren't good then, and he wanted to win right then. So.
Also, do you think too much was made of the Big Bo Jackson versus Brian Bosworth meeting? Do you think too much was made of that hit? Brian did get the tackle into the end zone. It may have been, but he did make the tackle. It wasn't like he was steamrolled. Do you think too much was made of that?
I do. I mean, and if it's anybody but Brian Bosworth, we wouldn't be talking about it. Because Brian Bosworth being the Boz and this villain and whatnot, and then both of them not really having any kind of career to speak of. One person pointed out last night that and who else was a bust? Bo Jackson. And I'm like, we never even think of Bo Jackson as a bust. We just think of him as someone of what might have been, and so for both of them, because everybody liked Bo, you kind of look back and it's oh man, he could have been great. And then you look back at the Boz and you're like, what a jerk! He's such a bust, Yeah. Serves him right. And so we all remember that play as him getting steamrolled or whatever. And when we were in New York for the premiere last week, Barry Switzer pointed out, it's looked like a pretty good tackle to me. Only gained about 3 yards. Bo Jackson running full speed, not bad.
Yeah, exactly. Heck, I played Tecmo Super Bowl. I know what that man's capable of.
Yeah. And so yeah, I mean, it's definitely a case of a couple things. One, the Boz was the villain, and I mean that's a play that happens every single game. You know, a linebacker is trying to tackle down a running back, and the running back starts as he's doing it, or or goes into the end zone as he's doing it. But because it's the Boz, because it was this this iconic showdown in our memories. I mean, we talked to the people and well, not much was made about it going into the game, but once the game happened, it was the Boz versus Bo. And I think that because both of their careers were then cut short, there was never an opportunity at redemption or at more plays for us to remember and look at. Had they both I mean, they were in the same division. They would have been playing each other 2 times a year for the next however long. And, it would have been this great back and forth rivalry. But instead, we're left with Bo Jackson had 250 yards in that game, and and Brian Bosworth couldn't stop him, including the time that he just ran over him on the goal line, and became part of the Bo legend. I mean, as we were doing the film, one of my crew members during one portion of the film, he said he was watching the Bo film, and he said, I think that the entire that Brian's entire image, the whole Boz brand, was just created so he could get blown up on national TV by Bo. So the Boz was just created just so he, and in a way that was right. And I'm really, it's kind of thrilling to be a part of changing that debate. And of course, we in the film, we definitely show the play and talk about the play and spend a lot of time on it, even though I was tempted not to. But why do we talk about it so much? Well, you can't do this story without talking about that, just because that's what people remember.
Sadly, yeah. I mean, as a kid growing up, that is the one image I have of Brian's pro career. Is that I just remember seeing that. It sticks in all of our minds. And Thaddeus, what a great film. The film's Brian and the Boz. It's going to be probably I'm playing throughout the weekend on ESPN, ESPN2. I know that there's tons of showings coming up. Just everyone's going to need to check this out. It's a great movie. Everyone definitely need to check it out. I tell you what, Thaddeus, we cannot thank you enough for coming on today, giving us your time. I know you've been extremely busy. The film just premieres last night, and here you are talking to us. Cannot thank you enough. And I'll tell you what, if you ever need anything in the future, work on another 30 for 30. Noah and I would be glad to come in and assist you any way we can, man. We'll go out. We'll go anywhere you want. We'll interview anyone you want. Just to have us as lackeys, we're definitely in.
Well, that's great. That's great. You can be cowboys. You can just pat the people down and bring them water.
Yes.
I would be honored. I would be honored. And before we go, I just want to thank my guys at Texas Crew, my producers from there, Chip Reeves, and all those guys work really hard. My co-producer, Patrick Rockstrelli. I don't know that any of them are listening, but let's just say all of them listen to you guys.
I would assume so.
Every single podcast, they don't miss it.
Right. We're gonna assume that. We assume that everyone, including Barry Switzer, will be turning this on. Maybe thinking.
Well, he is your grandfather, and I understand why you changed the pronunciation.
I know. So I can't be the Swits. I can be the Swites. But no, I think that works too. My persona is just developing at age 30. We'll see what happens from here. But
he does have his own wine label, so maybe you can aspire to that.
I can spend my days feet up in Northern California, Napa Valley. I think I'm in for that. No more sports for any of us. It's just
there you go.
Hard.
There you go.
We'll
never hear from you again.
Hey, I'll tell you what. Let's keep in touch, my man, because you're a great talent in this industry, and we can't. I'd love to have you on again, just talking about Pony Excess, because that was an amazing film in and of itself. Another topic for another day. But thank you so much for being on with us. Hope everything goes well. The film's going to be extremely well received. All the best to you, my man. Let's keep in touch.
Thank you. I'll be on anytime.
Thanks a lot. We appreciate it. Have a good one.
Yep.
Take care.
Bye-bye. Billy Sims was a fantastic fantastic interview. He told this great story about getting recruited by Barry Switzer. He said, he was working at the gas station when he was in high school, and he was going to another school. He'd already committed, whatever. He already told Coach Switzer this, but anyway, he's working at the gas station one day, and the payphone rings, and he goes up and he answers the phone, and sure enough, it's Coach Switzer on the payphone. And this was a Saturday, and the Sooners were playing football right then. It was halftime. He's like, "Coach, ain't you supposed to got a game today?" And Switcher's like, "Yeah, well, it's halftime. We're really beating them pretty good, and I was thinking about you."
Wow.
And Billy Sims is like, "Now that's impressive."